Hi, hello, and welcome back to Engineering Chaos, a podcast where normally my co-host and I talk about life in corporate America, give advice to those coming up behind us, and generally talk about what it's like to be two women in the engineering field. And I know y'all have seen a lot of just me, and I promise we have been recording. I'm just trying to keep a backlog of episodes, and some of my recordings have crashed and things like that. So I am trying to keep that backlog. You will see more of us talking about a lot of this political stuff together. But for the sake of getting an episode out this week, and for the sake that I use this podcast as my little ranty rant station, if you will, I am tired of hearing the narrative that the removal of DEI equals merit-based hiring. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about merit-based hiring and merit-based promotions and just a merit-based society, if you will. Because DEI did not repeal a merit-based society in any way, shape, or form. It helped those of us that actually fucking needed it and were qualified, but misogynistic white men that needed their egos fucking stroked kept getting in our ways. As a woman who is in a 70-30 engineering field, where 70% of the population that works jobs in engineering are men. I don't know the statistics on white men versus men of color. That's not my place to speak about, especially when it comes to the people of color thing. I am a woman, though. I am in that 30%. And today, too many things have happened that piss me off. In the effort to be compliant with all these new DEI rules, places like West Point, and therefore it will roll to other college campuses and even companies that allow things from these organizations to come in and have clubs or activities or regular meetings or whatever. Specifically, the one I'm talking about here is the Society of Women Engineers is being removed from West Point, which, if what the military is doing says anything for the rest of the college campuses out there following suit with these DEI practices, or these lack thereof, if you will, that means the Society of Women Engineers, which is a literal professional organization that help a lot of women like me and my friends and my co-host here on this podcast find jobs, connect together, meet with recruiters, and encourage women to be in engineering as a whole, will now cease to exist on college campuses and even some early career company campuses as it exists today. The fact that I am looking at some of these new anti-DEI policies when it comes to accreditation boards, and the engineering accreditation board that my degree was done under could be at risk in the state of Florida here, is insane. The obsession with diversity, equity, and inclusion being the reason that we are not in a merit-based society is disgusting. Because if you think we can trust a bunch of hiring managers to hire people of any variety, but mostly men, to hire people who are simply just qualified and not because they want to be bros with them, well, let me introduce you to my career where I've had to fight every step of the fucking way to prove that I deserve to be in the room as a woman, and it's not because I'm not qualified. I have had to, and I know I'm not the only one. I know as a white woman, I have my own privilege. I'm not saying I don't. Because I also know that white women white women in vets tend to be the highest why can I not say recipient today? The highest recipient of DEI practices. In a way, I am a DEI hire, but that's not why I'm mad, because I am more than qualified for the jobs that I do and the jobs that I have had in the past. My career has been nothing but fighting misogynistic men every step of the way. My first job out of school, I had old men constantly trying to tell me that I was dressed wrong, no matter what I wore. It was never inappropriate for the workplace. I was overdressed most of the time, even though they were wearing shorts, cargo shorts, and t-shirts. But, my jeans and a button-up was either overdressed or underdressed, depending on what day they fucking felt like telling me. And then you have them gaslighting me when I tried to guide my career and telling me that the goals I had for my career benefited me and not the group as a whole. Are you fucking kidding me? It's my career. Old men in that scenario. My next job, I had a leader turn to me and say, "Don't get it twisted, sweetie." A, don't call me sweetie. But B, he then proceeded to turn to the male colleague next to him who said the exact same thing I did and said, "Yeah, that's exactly what we want to do." While the whole room watched, I was not entirely certain that what I had just seen was what I had just seen until management encouraged me to report it, because they wanted me to stand up for myself for the first time in my career. I thankfully had some extremely supportive management in that situation, because at that point I had been gaslit so far in my career by other men to believe that my feelings about situations that I wasn't being discriminated against, because gender-based discrimination doesn't exist anymore. Bull fucking shit. There are still people in the engineering world, still men in the engineering world, that don't believe women should be there. Look at the dude that got appointed to UWF, who literally said we should do everything to actively not recruit women to engineering, medical, and law, because we are medicated and meddlesome. So you already have a significant difference between the amount of men and amount of women in engineering. And STEM is fucking hard. It is not for everybody. But actively not recruiting and encouraging women to go into it will create an even bigger deficit, and create an even bigger deficit, but also create the environment that I lived in previously, where the men don't want you there and will do everything they can to make sure you are as uncomfortable as humanly possible. Anyone who has listened to this podcast knows that in our early episodes, we talked about Dragon Lady and Tweedledum. That was the most men just disgusting behavior situation I have been in. And I have been in a lot. But that situation was active sexual discrimination on his part. It was only ever women that he treated like shit. His qualifications were clearly not there to the rest of the team, but none of the men who watched him do this to all of us, who were significantly more qualified and actively told us that all of the time, did anything. They sat by and watched as all of us left and stated our reasons for leaving, being that man. Tweedledum drove out so many women from that team. And the good old boys club that was on that team created a hostile workplace for a lot of women who entered that team. So don't tell me that DEI is the reason we aren't because there are plenty of unqualified ones that get hired and prioritized over the qualified women still to this day, even with DEI, even with the EEOC. These companies constantly get away with promoting people that stroke their egos rather than the people that are actually qualified. Because I am not anti a merit-based society if it is truly a merit-based society. You cannot have a merit-based society similar to that of how corporate America is currently run. You just can't. That is, I mean, talk about merit-based society. Let's talk about the 6 little cronies, the 19 to 24-year-old engineers, which I really don't want to call them that, because some of them just graduated high school, which means they definitely haven't gone through engineering school yet. They're not engineers. They're Elon fucking dick suckers. And I have said in previous episodes prior to all of this that Elon was not someone to look up to with how to run a company, with how to treat your employees, with any of these things. And voila, here we are. He's still continuing to prove me correct. When you are taking 6 people who barely know how to wipe their own asses, and I was young and stupid too, so I'm not blaming it on them. They're just young. They have no experience, let alone experience in fucking government or engineering or security, cybersecurity, anything that you should have to be handling that type of data. Yeah, you're young and stupid. You're just dick sucking Elon Musk. They are putting a bad name on engineers as a whole right now, but they are also the reason I have stated multiple times on this podcast that I don't love this industry. It is men like that that drive the women who actually know what they're doing out of this field. Moving DEI will remove what little protections there already were for women in the engineering and tech space. It's not about merit, because if it was about merit, I wouldn't have been told multiple years that because my personality's not sweet and dick sucky, I can't be promoted. Because I didn't stroke a senior level's ego and constantly act like I need him, I wasn't allowed to be promoted early. And I have literal documentation when I asked, what can I do to be promoted? Meaning technical skills. What do I need? I got nothing but personality responses. And I'm not going for a leadership position where I am leading a team. I am an individual contributor, so my personality does not fucking matter. And even if it did, it shouldn't be the focus of my promotion. My technical skills, my qualifications, if you will, should be the focus. And I'm not anti-working in a team. Before you go and dig into like, well, if your personality on this podcast is what, no. Obviously, I'm more professional at the workplace than I am on this podcast. But because I am actually fucking assertive as a woman, I get hate on. And the co-host of this podcast can actually confirm that. I have never been an asshole for no reason. If you are going to continue to gaslight me, I am going to fight back. And that surprises people that a woman dare to fight back. I have been denied promotion time and time again for stupid reasons when I watch the men, or it's not even just men in this case, it's the people who stroke the ego of the higher ups and play the corporate game that get promotions. And that's not merit-based. Just like the 6 little engineers that are following Elon around got the opportunity to follow Elon around, it's because they're stroking his fucking ego and they think he's a god. That has nothing to do with their qualifications. And yes, I am pro making the government go through performance reviews. But simply just firing everybody or promising them buyouts that they're never gonna get, likely, in my opinion, is not merit-based. You're not evaluating how they've performed. And if they've been there a short time, what milestones have they met thus far to justify them keeping their positions? I understand that there's a potential being the key word, because I haven't seen a ton of proof. I've seen a lot of theories, but there's a potential that the government overhired in certain areas, and they do need to weed out those positions that were unnecessary. Sure, but again, simply just dropping the bomb on people that you're fired based on your start date is not merit-based. You want a merit-based society, how about you actually look at their performance? You want a merit-based society, let's go away from the corporate world and go into school systems. Well, how about you don't punish the kids that have straight A's and don't need to be in class for not being there? I nearly failed in high school, I think 3 times, because I was allowed to miss days for other educational things like trips to do educational research. And I just happened to miss the whole first week of school. But you know what I didn't? I had nothing less than an A in any of those classes. So it wasn't a big deal, but they threatened to fail me, even though I still passed the class. That makes no... Failing students for not attending that are doing well is not merit-based. That doesn't prove that they don't know the content. And that's why I've said multiple times on this podcast, if I ever had kids, I would homeschool them. And that was before this administration that I have said that. The schooling system was trash back when I was in high school over a decade ago. It has only gotten worse. Attendance records are stupid. That is not very merit-based of you. Let's go with merit-based research. How can anyone actually do significant research and, show what their study says if you ban them from talking about using certain words to even be funded to do that research? If a person looking for a grant isn't even allowed to use the word woman in their research, how do we expect that medications and diagnostic criteria and everything that is different between men and women, if we really want to go with men and women are different, which by the two-gender approach, if you will, you were saying biologically, I'm not disagreeing, biologically men and women are different. Then why aren't we studying women in our research? Why are we saying women is a banned term in grant proposals? Not very merit-based of you. Very men-focused of you. I'm all for a merit-based society. I am all for, a lot of people have mentioned blind hirings. Awesome. I'm okay with that. I don't care. But I'm not pro the removal of DEI either. Because I understand, because I've worked with people who absolutely would hire their bros, that some of these hiring managers should have never been in a management position to begin with. But then on top of that, wouldn't know a qualified applicant if it bit them in the ass. I will openly admit to being a reciprocant of this, even as a woman. I made friends with some people and I got my current job without there ever being an application. I had no competition. Why? Because I had a friend that pulled me in to replace him. I don't even think I sent the team my resume. He vouched for me, I got the job. So, because I had a man vouch for me this time, it worked out well. But I've also done it for other friends of mine. It doesn't mean I'm not qualified. I am qualified for the job. But no one else, I didn't have to compete against anybody else. So there could have been 500 other qualified people that got the job. Same, I've done it for friends of mine. I've referred them. It's no different than referrals. I'm putting my stamp of, you get extra points when someone refers you. Or being a vet, that's technically a DEI practice. Bringing people into the company is extra points, quite literally. With the company I'm at now, I struggled to get in with them until I met someone that worked inside the walls and I could use as a referral. I put their name down and suddenly I was being called. It's never been a merit-based society. And if we're going to talk about truly making things merit-based, then yeah, blind applications, every position you open has to go through a competitive market. You can't just pass gigs on to your favorite people, because that happens a lot inside internal walls. And hell, if we really want to talk about it, no position can be hired solely internally. You have to outsource at least some resumes to see if an outside candidate is in fact better than your current internal candidates on qualifications. Because obviously there are culture fits and everything else. But again, culture fits don't matter in a merit-based society. If we're looking just purely at black and white, qualification for qualification, skill against skill, these online systems that throw away resumes for not keyword matching appropriately means people are losing out on their jobs that they are more than qualified for. So throw away all automated processing resume systems too. HR is looking at me like, are you fucking crazy? That's how we even get any positions filled. There's so many applicants. I know, it's unrealistic. That's my point. Merit-based is never a true blue, unbiased thing. And just because HR or DEI or whatever is forcing people to look at other applicants in various variations. In my world, it's mostly forcing people to look at women, because I could be wrong on the statistics here. I absolutely could be 100% wrong. Do not call me on this. But in my experience, just purely based on visual experience, if you will, and different teams I've worked with, a male person of color is more likely to get a leadership position over a white woman in engineering. That's been my experience. I've had a fair amount of female bosses, and some have been awesome and some have been terrible. As y'all know, Dragon Lady is the only female that's actually been horrible, but she has her own issues, and I'm not going to go into that. The problem is, right, we can scream about merit-based society. Well, I'm sorry, what qualifications does Elon's cronies have? Because I see none, given that some literally just graduated high school. Other than maybe he was an intern, and how did he get that internship? I don't fucking know. That's still not really a qualification for what they're doing. Just interning at SpaceX or Tesla, that's not the same, realistically, as what they're doing currently. Aside from the illegal aspects of what they're doing currently, there were many, many concerns in Congress and during the Senate hearings raised over the qualifications of Hegseth and RFK Jr. Was anything done about them? No. But still, clearly, there are some concerns about qualifications. So should those be a competitive market position rather than just pure nomination? If we truly want merit-based, you should be looking at everybody. Everything should be an application system, and nothing should be... elections should be blind. You shouldn't know who the candidate is. You should just vote purely on their policy. I'm actually not opposed to that, now that I'm saying that out loud, because I think a lot of it's become a reality TV show, and that's fine. But when you're talking merit-based, how the fuck it is inherently biased? Because white men specifically, but men in general, and even some women, okay, just people in power, I'm not even gonna say men, just people in power, because Dragon Lady needed her ego stroked a lot too. People who like to drink the power need their egos stroked. They need the people underneath them to need them. And when you don't, when you are just an efficient worker that does your job, and you don't want to suck up to them and be their favorite human, when you don't play the corporate game, you inherently suffer as an employee. When you aren't the one that goes to happy hours and aren't the one that wants to participate in making a podcast, even though you're literally an engineer. I mean on company time, not outside. Yes, I am on a podcast. It's not the podcast it's the issue. It's that you're paying an engineer salary to make a podcast. That's the issue. Anyways, because I understand the irony of me saying that. It's the on-company time thing. It's the forcing people who want to just do their job to do a team-building activity. That's not very merit-based. That's not setting me up for future skills I need to do my job. It's fluffing your ego so you feel good that you made a team culture event, even though half the people there don't even want to fucking be there. So, yeah, and yes, I understand people do like those culture events and they like to feel like they're a part of their workplace culture, or else they wouldn't still exist. But I'm playing the devil's advocate here and saying, if we truly want merit-based societies, strip all the fluffy culture from your corporate workplaces, strip everything down to bare minimum. I wouldn't want that. I like my flexibility. I like working at 2 a.m. if I can't sleep. I don't like having to work on Fridays. There are many things that I like that came with things like DEI or workplace culture or mental health of the employee. But saying that merit-based is the best way to go about things and saying that DEI made the workplace inherently not merit-based isn't true, because I've seen more inadequate white men or just inadequate men in general promoted to positions they don't belong in a lot as an engineer. And it is a lot more difficult for women to make a name for themselves in engineering. Plenty of them have, it's not impossible, but similar to conversations I've heard from people of color that have said, I had to work double time to make sure everyone knew how competent I was. The same can go for women in engineering. And I'm sure, I cannot speak on it, but I'm sure women of color in engineering feel worse. I don't know. I can't speak on that. That's not my place. But as even a more digestible, if you will, white woman in the engineering space, it's not merit-based. Corporate America, in my decade of being in it at this point, has never been merit-based. It has all been about who you know and whose ego you're willing to stroke. And if you're not willing to strike that ego, you're not getting elevated in any capacity. If anything, you will be hindered by your advancement opportunities because you aren't willing to stroke that ego. I have many complaints about the company I work for, but I have many good things about the company I work for, and that is a lot of those good things have come out of DEI related practices. I find it absurd that I started working for this company in 2019 and they were just starting to build private spaces for women to be able to pump. Because there are plenty of moms that are working engineering moms. The women that go into engineering, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on whatever way you look at it, are more likely to be career women rather than parents, but there still are plenty of high-powered type A women that are do it all. They're moms, they're high-level managers and things inside the company, and they need that space to continue to be an awesome engineer and an awesome mom. Women shouldn't have to choose between being able to pump and breastfeed their kids and be at work. And I feel like things like paternity leave, I could be wrong. To my knowledge, my company has always had it, but I feel like paternity leave has come out of things like DEI, because previously no one ever assumed that a man needed to be home and bond with his kid. And not all companies offer that, obviously, but the fact that some even do anymore has come out of the importance that we are finding that having both parents bond with infant has become. Again, I've stated 100 times, I'm not a parent, but I know enough parents that know that these things are important to them. And saying none of that matters, DEI is just getting rid of racist practices. That's not what DEI ever was. And even with those protections in place, people still got overlooked for friends hiring friend practices and internal only practices. And I have plenty of engineering friends that have tried to get in with the company I work for, and they just can't because we only move people around internally. And I'm afraid that with the removal of DEI and this whole push to merit-based whatever, more of that is going to start happening. That the talent, and I'm not against growing your own talent, I'm fully for growing your own talent, but never allowing anyone from the outside to even apply is crazy. And there are positions that are benefited because they need to be filled quickly, obviously. But if you knew months and ahead of time that someone was retiring and you needed to fill them, looking at external candidates is an important way to diversify your talent, your knowledge base, and your experience. Because we all, as engineers, have different experiences with different practices, different ways of doing things. And being able to shape new advancements in engineering is so important. When you all have just lived in the same little bubble your entire life or your entire career, no one's ever going to question why something you're doing is wrong. It becomes an echo chamber, and then you run into issues down the line where someone questions it finally, and it's too late to go back and fix it, or too expensive to go back and fix it. Diversity in engineering, especially, and I'm just talking diversity of talent. Not even diversity in races, genders. I mean, gender diversity is race diversity. It's all important. Diversity as a word is important in engineering because there's so much knowledge spread across people who did commercial, people who've done government, people who've done private sector, people who've done tech, people who have gone from tech to defense or defense to tech. There are so many different ways of doing things in engineering, and even the standard bodies aren't perfect. Like, that set the standards for all of us aren't perfect and need that knowledge base to come in and say, hey, what about this? That diversity, equity is, I don't feel like I should have to argue equity, especially when it comes to, there are plenty of people that are qualified from a technical perspective that might just need a little bit more grace and accommodations with things like remote work or private offices if they really need a quiet space to work, or other, I mean, there's obviously the obvious ADA, like physical disabilities, which I feel like a lot of companies skirt around their legal responsibility to physical, like wheelchair users and guide dogs and things like that. But that's here nor there. I'm not a disabled person. I was afraid because of an administration like this to put in formal accommodations because I didn't want to be documented as a lazy worker, a potential target for layoffs because I had accommodations and I don't fit the norm. So I always look for positions that allow me to accommodate myself rather than needing the company to do it for me because of shit that's going on right now. Because there are people literally fearing for their mental health accommodations because I haven't looked at the rules of the ADA, but traditionally speaking, the ADA without the EEOC really only protects a lot of physical disabilities and not so much accommodations for mental health type things like ADHD or mental disabilities, or the more severe mental disabilities like autism and Down syndrome, they'll protect, but they won't protect the smaller ones, not necessarily lesser known, but lesser known for accommodations like ADHD or anxiety or major depressive disorder. Those types of ones that are less consistent, if you will, are harder to get accommodations for. And people are panicking. IEPs in schools, people are panicking. Equity shouldn't be a question. No, we are not all equal, but we can all be equitable. We can provide support to one person to have them do an awesome job without tearing down somebody else. Providing a little extra support in the means of things like remote work is not unqualified. It is equitable. Inclusion is more than just about the LGBTQ. Inclusion is as simple as making sure you don't purposely exclude your female counterparts in conversations. Inclusion is making sure that workplace culture I was talking about comes out of inclusion. Making sure that your employees are comfortable at work and it's not a draining, and they want to continue to be there. These initiatives are so important to the overall health of the employee. It's not just about hiring practices. On top of that, canceling things like clubs on college campuses or organizations at workplaces purely because of DEI, like women's, like SWE, Society of Women Engineers, that I was talking about at the beginning. There's a couple other professional organizations related to people of color. I cannot quote them off the top of my head because I don't belong there. But there are organizations related to encouraging more people of color in engineering as well, because it is known as a white male-dominated industry. It is wild to me that we wouldn't want to support more knowledge, more experience. Simply just having the qualifications because your buddy's sitting next to you, and I have been a recipient of this. Like I said, I always was like, that's not. I knew that group that is now my team did that. There are many teams that never look outside of recommendations from the people they are currently working with if someone is leaving and coming in. They never open positions. So no one even gets a chance to compete for it. And that's happened at every company I've worked for. There are positions that open and you never even get told to, as an internal candidate, right? I've had this position as well. I never even got told that there was a rec to apply to for me to potentially compete for that position, even though my management knew I wanted it and had been doing it for months. And to some extent in that situation, I think it was my own manager protecting me from the rest of senior leadership that didn't like me. But I still would have liked the opportunity to at least try. And I didn't even get that. They hired some other man, and he wasn't a bad manager. He's not. But again, I didn't even get the opportunity, right? We talk about merit-based. I had the qualifications. Why wasn't I even given the opportunity? And this is more than just a me thing. These are just my experiences, right? Merit-based is a fucking lie. It has never been merit-based, with or without DEI. Removal of these practices, both the EEOC to some extent, obviously the act is still there, but in certain scenarios like federal contracting, you now are no longer allowed to consider these things in your hiring practices. Which, again, spoiler alert, vets are DEI hires. Vets are EEOC. They get bonus points. But one question I haven't seen people talking about is, what about referral programs? Are referral programs DEI now too? Because someone on the inside said, hey, yeah, I like this guy? Because they do get extra points, and I'll tell you they do. And we, as the employees, are given benefits to recruit people into the company. So is that really merit-based, or is it a who you know situation? Because to me, it's a who you know. If you get hired based on my referral, because it is easier to come back into the company if you know, or get into the company if you know someone to send you a link on the inside, well, that's not very merit-based. Yeah, you still got hired because you have the qualifications, but you were even looked at against everybody else because someone referred you. You were put higher on the stack as a referral. That's just reality. At most companies, if you refer someone, for instance, I was put down as a referral for a family member without my knowledge when they applied. I got asked, and I tanked their interview because I knew they wouldn't be a good worker. That doesn't mean they didn't meet the qualifications. They didn't even get an interview because of my recommendation of them. And they're my own family. So, are referral programs DEI? Does actively encouraging people to come into your company, is that considered DEI? Merit-based is a lie, guys. And all of these cronies running around talking about, well, cry more about the removal of DEI. I understand the consequences of removing it. I do. I have understood that for a long time. Will it get worse than what I've already seen? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it was bad to begin with, and companies just don't tell you how bad it is because they can hide behind these automated systems that parse through resumes. They hide behind those a lot too, by the way. Will it get any worse for me as a woman if staying with my current company? Probably not. Will it get worse for other women who are maybe seeking work while they're pregnant? Absolutely. Will it get worse for women coming into the industry now? Also, probably. Because they're going to have to deal with a lot of cronies that are also Elon dick suckers, even if they don't work for Elon himself, that there's still a lot of them that would gladly go kneel, if you will, for that man, that are going to be their hiring managers. They're going to have to deal with senior leadership that has grown up in a culture that didn't respect women in the industry. That was true for me when I started a decade ago. There are more hiring managers that aren't those types now than when I started, but they still exist. I have still run into them everywhere I go. Will it be worse now that they don't have to consider those things when it comes to looking at resumes? Probably. But I also foresee the internal hiring getting worse, where they're no longer looking to diversify their talent pool with external candidates. They just want internal people to move around and repeat the same echo chamber. On top of that, if you look at efficiencies, it is more efficient to not have to train a new hire. It is more efficient to not have to teach everyone the knowledge base and just move them around and bring them up to speed purely on the work they're doing versus the entire company and the company culture, and get them hired in with benefits and go through orientation and everything else. It is cheaper and more efficient to never hire external ever again. And now that there's no requirement to do so, because that's a way to promote diversity and inclusion, is external hires. Promoting HR can go, hey, why don't we open this externally to see what candidate pool we can get? That is a way to gain more talent and more diversity. Doesn't have anything to do with, you can look at diversity in talent. Nothing to do with race, gender, any of it. Just purely diversity and experience. All your qualifications at base level, what certifications you have, what degree you have, can all be exactly the same from an internal candidate and an external candidate. But without a requirement to diversify your talent pool, you're gonna choose the internal, more efficient, cheaper candidate because you no longer need to diversify your talent. So those federal workers that are losing their jobs may struggle to find jobs again in private sector, even in a similar world like defense contracting, for instance. They will probably struggle to get in with those companies, despite the fact that those companies are probably going to get funneled a ton of money under this administration, because those companies would rather overwork their internal workforce and be efficient and cheap than hire externally to diversify their talent pool now that they don't have to. This impacts the industry in so many ways, but purely at the merit-based thought line, it's a lie. It didn't exist prior to DEI. It didn't exist with DEI. I'm not opposed to, like I said, I'm not opposed to requiring performance evaluations for government employees and removing the kind of tenure culture that is, oh, you passed your first year, now you're unfireable. I hated that culture back in the day. I still hate it to this day. I think government employees should, in a way, yes, federal workers are just regular everyday people. They should be held to the same standard that the rest of us are. I, as a remote worker, still have to meet my targets and deadlines. They, as a remote worker in the government, should still have to meet theirs. And if they are, cool. I don't care. We are the same. Yeah. That's my level of transparency. If their boss has decided they're meeting their targets, cool. That's their business, not mine. Yes, I understand that the tax dollars of the average human pays for their salaries, but at the end of the day, most civil servants, I'm not talking about literal government, Congress, the president, the vice president, the military even. I am talking about the civil servants who are just federal workers that applied to a job on USA Jobs, got the job, have a boss, have to do work, that stuff. Those people are just like us. They just happen to work for the government and have better benefits to some extent. And, you know, they're no different. They just work for the government instead of a corporate entity. And in some ways, it's better, and in some ways, it's worse. I don't disagree with removing the tenure vibe of working for the government. I don't. However, the whole concept of gutting the government to become a merit-based society is just a false one, because merit-based never exists. Merit-based is inherently biased, and merit-based is inherently biased unless you are doing everything blind. Blind research studies, blind hiring, blind voting. You don't know who it is. It's all about qualifications. That is the only way you get through merit-based and actually are completely and totally unbiased. And the reality is no one's going to go for that. No one is going to go for submitting a resume without their name on it, without any sort of internal referral, without any sort of communication with anyone on the inside saying, hey, look out for my resume. No one's going to go for completely blind hiring systems. And no one's going to go for removing these AI systems either that throw away resumes that are perfectly qualified for just not having the resume written in just the right way. No one's going to go for that shit. No one. Because it costs them more money, is less efficient, and they want to know who they're looking at. I understand background checks, but that's after your interview. You at least get to show your face, and then you can do all your background checks and stuff. Because none of that comes into play until after you're hired. So you can go through all the process blind and then submit everything, and then they can find out who they hired. Same with voting. Congress, the president, all of it's blind, just purely policy and what they say. I can guarantee you the president we have right now, had he had to actually, put everything on words and the media didn't exist in the world of voting, our world would look very, very different right now. We as human beings are inherently biased. So saying we want a merit-based society, if we're not going to roll back to blind everything, no one knows anything about anybody when it comes to hiring, when it comes to promotions, when it comes to, I don't fucking know. And we can do things like the hospital matching system with medical students, where you match to the place that you're most qualified to work at, for the program you're most qualified to work for. Whatever it is, it has to be blind. It has to be purely based on your qualifications, your test score. I don't agree with standardized testing, but in the world of medical, it's your qualifications, your test scores, all of those things. College applications, completely blind. All you see is their transcript, no name, nothing, no ethnicity, none of that. Because another argument here is more than just hiring practices. It has been college applications. Well, you want to talk about merit-based, and RFK Jr. has literally talked about how his application to Harvard was his name. So that's not very merit-based of you either. I busted my ass. But I was also 16, so I did get turned away from things because of how young I was. Once I got to school, I don't think schools ageismed me because I didn't apply to too many because I was 16, but that also limited my options. Because there were rules when it came to dealing with minors. But I didn't say that was fucking ageism. I made the choice to go to school at 16. All of it should be blind. Grant applications, scholarship applications. No one gets to know a damn thing about you other than your qualifications. It should be like a matching game. Here's the skills required. Here's the skills I have. And if you want to verify that people actually have those skills, give them technical evaluations at their interview. The tech industry does this all the time. But it's still not blind, right? They do technical evaluations at interviews, before interviews, to get an interview. It's not uncommon to prove people, because yes, people can lie on paperwork all the time, but people lie on resumes too. They'll say they have 5 years of experience with a tool, but really they have 2 years of experience with a similar tool. But again, that's not, people lie all the time. And people encourage it too. Struggling to get a job, lie and learn later. People who do like how to get through these automated resume systems tell you to keyword match, even if it's a lie. So that's not really merit-based either. People who fully believe, I would love, genuinely, I am interested, because it does frustrate me, and I've gone off on little tangents that are probably not conducive to conversation and debate. I would love for anyone listening to this right now in the comments to explain what you think, not because of DEI, what you think a merit-based, do you fully believe today's society, outside of the government, corporate entities are truly merit-based? With or without DEI? Because with, I didn't see any difference from without before we started focusing on it. Because I feel like DEI has kind of always existed to some extent. Like even during Trump's first administration, this wasn't a Biden administration thing. Practices to, I feel like we did an episode on this. Practices to encourage women to go into STEM were created in like the 90s. That's deep. It is encouraging women to take a stance and take a part in this place that they previously weren't welcome. And I don't want to lose that welcoming. I don't want to feel like I need to run away from my workplace. Not that I do, but I'm saying in the case that it got worse, or I ran into some of my old colleagues that were bad even under some of these practices that now can go unchecked, because there have been many of them that I just kind of smiled and nodded and didn't say anything because I wasn't going to get into political debates at work. So with that being said, I do encourage in the comments for those to explain if you don't agree with merit-based only is unbiased if everything's blind. How do you foresee, without the laws that were put in place to stop employers from discriminating against women, people of color, LGBTQ members, because that's what these things were made for, to stop the discrimination. How do we have a fully merit-based society with no bias if everything's not blind? Genuine question. I am open to hearing other people's opinions here because I don't see the current day America, corporate America, as merit-based, with or without DEI, truthfully. Because I didn't notice that much of a difference in the last 4 years. I noticed a couple extra meetings and a couple extra trainings that no one really pays attention to anyway. I noticed some extra wording. I'm not openly LGBTQ at work. I noticed some extra wording in the acknowledgments for like anxiety and things like that, and who's protected. Okay, cool. We're adding a little extra words to make sure that bad human beings don't actively discriminate against people for being who they are. So I genuinely am curious. If you think the corporate world or the tech bro world, if you think Elon Musk is a good company structure to follow, because I genuinely don't, and I've looked into how his companies run, enlighten me why you think that without using DEI as an excuse. Because I'm not a hiring manager, and from what I've seen, DEI hasn't stopped our hiring managers. And I know it's one data point. It is not statistically relevant, but my own experience says DEI hasn't stopped our managers from not, hiring incompetent men. Because I'm not even saying incompetent white men, because Tweedledum was not a white man. He was just an incompetent man, period. And there were other men on that team that were not white men. They were incompetent men hired over women, sure, you could make that. They weren't the type to abide by DEI, if you will. Because you could see the token, as some would put it, I don't agree with this wording, but the token people of color or the token women, you could see who those people were on that team. That team is a problem as a whole for DEI. So anyways, it never stopped the struggle inside corporate America to fight against people. And yes, I understand that I can put out lawsuits and things like that. But the thing is there are more good people than there are bad. There still are a lot of bad, and the DEI, the EU, those types of things only protect you if you do something about it. And you have to have proof, and a lot of these things are hard to prove because a lot of them are in person, word to word. And that's another reason why I love remote work, because everything unintentionally gets documented in some form that I can save for later, except for in meetings, which is how Tweedledum got around everything. He would always say these things to me in meetings or in person, so that I didn't have the documentation. When he finally did loosen his grip a little bit, I documented everything. I screenshotted IMs, I screenshotted emails, I forwarded emails to HR, and I still got nothing out of it. So, genuinely speaking, if you are pro merit-based society, because I'm not anti, I just don't think it really exists without biases. Unless we do everything blind. Is there a way? Here's the question of the day to y'all. Is there a way to have an unbiased, merit-based society without being completely blind to who you're evaluating, getting rid of automated systems, or at least explaining how those automated systems look at resumes, better to the applicants, and never knowing until you've hired them who they are, what their voice is, because voices give away people, mannerisms give away people. Having it all basically text-based or like Mass Singer style, if you will. Is there a way to have a truly merit-based society without going through all of that? Because I don't foresee that there is. And if you believe that there is, do you believe today is a merit-based society? Because I don't. And I don't think we've been merit-based for a very long time. Because I've always had people who in my life have been in the corporate world for a very long time yell at me for not being the type that goes to happy hours and goes to schmooze and actively refusing to schmooze the higher ups and stroke their egos. Because I believe in a merit-based society, I will not do it. And it is proven to me time and time again that merit means nothing if you're not willing to stroke their ego. So enlighten me in the comments if you're listening to this and you got this far without getting mad at me and rage commenting. Enlighten me. I genuinely want to hear people's opinions because to me, merit-based never existed. Merit-based is a lie. As much as I would love for everything to just be about your qualifications and what you have on paper and your experience, that's not the case even today with or without DEI. Most of my career, I have gotten 0 legs up. I have worked for everything I have gotten in my career and worked my ass off to get where I have. It wasn't until very recently where I made some friends, not at the higher up, literal friends, peers, that I got my first handout as a DEI hire. This will change everything for women coming into the industry. And there is a increasing thought that there shouldn't be a focus on bringing more women into engineering. And that's scary for those of us that are still here and have to do many more years, and for those that are coming in. I have said for a long time I want to get out, and the likelihood that things get worse in the industry for women is high, but the thing I want to get out to is just as male dominated. Is it going to get any better? Probably not. It is a scary, and I don't say that as like a fear-mongering, they're throwing us all out of the workplace, Handmaid's Tale style thing. While I think that is a possibility, I think they're just going to make it very, very uncomfortable for women to be in the workforce without literally telling us to leave. Especially in places that are typically male-dominated, like engineering, like medical, like law. They don't want us there. At least the people who are speaking openly, not necessarily the day-to-day people. The people who are making these decisions don't want us there. They want to actively discourage women from being anything other than mothers and family homemakers. And I say this as someone who's been married for almost 7 years now. I am not anti-men. I am not anti not traditional marriage, anti-marriage, obviously. Like, I am anti-traditional gender roles because I don't live them. I think they're silly and I think they're stupid. I think we both can contribute to the household in whatever way we contribute to the household. I don't force my husband to do my oil change, even though he could. I go and pay for it. I don't need him, but he doesn't force me to do the house chores. I like to clean my kitchen because I'm particular about how it is set up. But he does all the floors because I hate it. We share responsibilities in our house. But I am not anti people who want to be the traditional homemakers. If they want to do that, great for them. As a woman, I feel like I would go stir crazy if I wasn't doing something. If you want me, and I've said this probably on a couple episodes now, if you want me to have kids, make sure I can afford it, because I'm not doing it without, like, giving up the lifestyle that I love. I'm just not. My husband and I like to do bougie shit. And we could not do our bougie shit and have a kid at the same time. So, and we make good money. Like, I'm not trying to brag, but like, in the grand scheme of things, it is possible for us to afford a child. But we would have to give up things that we don't want to give up. We're selfish. Fuck. But on top of that, I have been very stern in the fact that no matter what I was doing as a career, I would not be in a situation where I was putting my kid in daycare every day. It just wasn't going to happen. I would be home with my kid, which is why building a business empire, being my own fucking boss is important to me. Not only because I believe in merit-based and I want my own labor and hard work to show for myself, because it doesn't do that at work. The work I put into my videos, the work I put into my content, the work I put into my clients, those all give me good results. If I don't do the work, I don't get new clients. Whereas at work, I could bust my ass and get zero recognition for any of it. Zero. Not always the case, but has been the case in the past. Someone else could get all love because they were my lead, even though they did jack shit. Has happened multiple times. So, yeah, merit-based is a lie. That is my outcome. Merit-based is a lie. It is inherently biased. And if you believe otherwise, I'm open to hearing your opinions in the comments. Truly, I am open. And I control this account, so my podcast co-host, who might not be as open to these conversations as I am, she's a little bit more feisty. I am very open to hearing both sides of the fence. I just don't think a merit-based society exists without inherent biases, myself included. If I have to hire someone, I am more likely to hire a female coach because I feel the clients that I would typically work with would feel more comfortable with a female because they're coming to me. You know, I tend to work with females. While I'm not opposed to working with males, it's just the vibe I put off. I'm not going to be the go hard or go home, like no pain, no gain style coach, which a lot of men are and a lot of men respond to. Now, I don't respond to female coaches myself. I hire a lot of men when I hire coaches, whether it be business mentors, because I need the no shit, Sherlock, like, get up off your ass and stop being lazy type of person. I need that in my life. A lot of women don't. They like the smoother, non-aggressive style. I need the aggressive because I am more of an aggressive person. I can be non-aggressive with my clients. But that's also why when I work with men, I am more aggressive with them and a little bit more tough love with them because I can be both. Everything has its bias. You could be the best person in the world and still want to hire someone you vibed with better if you have two people of equal qualifications in front of you. So, and that could be you're a woman hiring another woman. That could be your frat bro hiring another frat bro. It's usually that case, but you know, there are many of other options out there. And the removal of some of these protections makes it so that all of those biases can come into play. Unless we are going to start living blind in our voting, in our applications, in our promotions. It's really hard. If you've been working on a team and maybe that's a way to do it. Promotions should never be from within the team. They can be from within the company, but they have to be an external to the team person. I don't know. It would be hard to do promotions blind, but that's the only way you do it without bias. And I don't know. I am open to hearing people's opinions on merit-based society because I think it's a lie. I don't think it really ever existed with or without DEI, like I've said. However, that is where I end today because I could go off on 5 million other rants, and I wanted to focus this one on merit-based and the DEI impact because diversity, equity, and inclusion is important in the workplace. It is important for women. It is important for white men. It is important for everyone because not just because of race and gender and sexual identity. It is important in engineering because you have a diversity of experience, and that allows you to be better engineers. It allows you to be better technically because you can learn from other people. Engineering at its core, despite how much I hate it sometimes, is a collaborative job. Not including diversity will put you in an echo chamber and will lead to failures in your systems, almost certainly. You could be the biggest advocate for quality control, but without diversity of experience, someone is going to miss something. And that's just reality. So, like I said, if you have different opinions on merit-based, I'm willing to hear you out as long as we are all respectful in the comments and we are not attacking administrations in either direction or attacking people. And we aren't focusing on DEI. I want to know purely how you would implement a solely merit-based society, because I do not think the one we exist in currently is that. So leave your comments below, and I will see y'all in future episodes where I fill in Ash on just about everything that has happened in the month of January and whatnot. So look forward to that. I apologize. It's just been a struggle to get everything edited on time. So I'm filling you in with my little rant about merit-based society. I appreciate everyone listening, and I hope we can have a civilized conversation in the comments.